Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and we're back. In this video, we're going to manufacture and mount the electronics board. But before we get started with that, we're going to give another special thanks to Argosy, first, Aramco, and Team 302, Lake Orion High School, for hosting our studio. Okay, there are two drawings for the electronics panel, or one file with two drawings in it. So it's listed as KB26015 electronics panel. One of the drawings gives us our outside dimensions, and one of them has like hole locations. We're not really worried about the hole locations right now. We're going to be worried about the one with just the outside dimensions so we can cut it out. There's actually a note on the hole one which says like all holes can be marked for drilling by using the robot frame, and that's what we're going to do. So we're not going to really pre-drill any of these holes, but we do need to get this the right size. And you will notice it is a weird size and shape. It's not just a regular rectangular strip like I think it was last year. It was two rectangular strips. This one has to fit around a lot of things. So like the battery mount is going to end up taking up this space here. And then we need these little cutouts in the front here and here to go around the motors that are, I think, the drive motors from the transmissions that are kind of like right in the way there. So, and I think this cutout here actually is for a wheel. So this is the side frame, the wheel area. And we got to stop so we don't hit the wheel. So we got to cut this weird thing out. The best way to start this is for us to make a rectangle that is the outer dimensions of the whole thing. So we're going to cut something that is from 0 to, this is 10.655 inches. And then from 0 to 26.5 inches. That's going to be our total size for the entire thing. So once we have a piece that is that length, then we're going to mark all of the other stuff as well, but then we'll go back and we'll cut the other stuff out. Now, I can do the big rectangular cut with a circular saw, or if you have a table saw or a big enough bandsaw, you might be able to do it where you just kind of take that one long cut. But then to do a lot of the smaller cutouts, there are a few different ways that you could do that. I'm going to try to do it on our vertical bandsaw because once our whole piece is done, I think we can make some of these cuts. None of them, I think, are longer than the bandsaw's throat, which is what matters. So I think I'll be able to sneak in and do it. We'll see. This one cut here might be, this one cut right here might be a problem for me. We'll see how that goes when we get there. If you have like a jigsaw or a reciprocating saw like that, one of the things that this drawing has is it has radiuses on every corner, on every inner area here. So like that's radiused. This one is radiused around. And what you can do is you can drill a hole in each of these corner locations, and then your jigsaw can cut into the hole. And that's how a lot of people would do this as well. And that's how we might have to do it if we have to drop back to the circular saw instead of the bandsaw. But just know that if you don't have those radiuses, it's fine. And just know that if this piece is not exactly the right size and shape, also going to be fine, but you may have to file stuff to make sure you have enough clearance or sand it down to make sure you have enough clearance. All right, let's get started with the marking here. So first thing, well, we're going to get a straight edge, and we're going to get kind of our tape measure ready to go. We'll work with both of them. Let's get this hopefully tightened down at 0. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And we're going to be using 1/2 inch thick plywood. I would strongly recommend getting birch plywood if they have it, or sometimes they'll call it cabinet grade plywood. You just get a cleaner surface, and usually there are less voids on the inside, and a lot of times you'll get more layers of plywood as well. It's a little bit more expensive, but honestly, $10 or $15 more to have a piece of wood that's actually flat-ish and not chipping apart on you is going to be worth it, in my opinion. All right, so let's get our marks here. First one is 26.5. Now, I bought a 2x4 inch piece of plywood, which means my width is only going to be 24 inches, which is unfortunate because we need 26.5. So we're going to have to do 26.5 in on the long direction here. So if I bring that in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is 26.5. And I can mark it on this side too. Okay, and one of the things that you'll see, especially when I'm marking in wood, is these kind of like crow's feet, I think they're called. The whole point is if you try to just do a line, like it's hard to get the line in exactly the right spot. But if you start with your pencil in the exact right spot you want it to be, and you pull away on 2 angles, then that point of these lines is exactly where my 26.5 is. So I'm trying to line my next thing up to those points, and I have a good place to sort of arrange from. All right, let's get all the way across. This is a brand new piece, so it should be pretty flat, although, I don't know if my square is, or my layout square is perfectly flat. So we'll just make sure we're right on those 2 points. And we can check it over on this side too. Are we 26.5 all the way over on this side? And we are 26.5 now, and yeah, we're on one of the points. Looks like one of my points might have been off a little bit. That's all right. Okay, so we'll bring that line all the way across. So that is one cut we need to make. And then the next cut we need to make is that 10.655 dimension. So from either edge, I'm going to go in 10.6, what did I say? That's a weird number, 10.655. 10.655. So that's 10 and 5/8 plus a little. 10 and 5/8 would be 625. So this is like a 32nd of an inch more. All right. So we're going to go to 10 and let's see, 10.5, 10 and 5/8, and we're just going to go the tiniest bit past 10 and 5/8. And I get another line up on this side. So 10.5, 10 and 5/8, and just a little bit past that. All right. Looks good. Then let's get our square in here. See if it lines up on both of those. It's pretty close, yeah. All right, and then we are going to trace that line all the way back. Okay, so this rectangle is where everything is going to fit. And now I guess we can kind of, let's see, so 0 is on this end. So I'm going to have the piece arranged this way. And we can start doing some of these other measurements. So first thing, we know there's a pocket in here that's going to get taken out. So let's mark that. Okay, so that is going to go in 6¼ inches. So we'll go 6¼ here. And then it's going to go out by 1 inch, which I think I can do better with the ruler or with the layout square. So if we go in until that's touching, we are at, let's see, 35¼ So 1 inch is going to be 34¼ So this is it here. We can draw the line up to that point. And then we can come from the end. And if you don't have the square, just measure another 1 inch in on this side in order to make sure you've got the dimension that you need. All right, so that, and then this is going to get taken out. That is not part of the final piece. All right, then what's next? So this one is going to be, we're going to be in from this end 20.25 inches. So if I measure from the same edge here, we go in 20.25 inches. That's where the other one starts, and that cutout is going to run kind of to the end, so we're going to end up taking this area out. It is also 1 inch wide, so we'll go this way on that line and measure out to 1 inch. So right now, this is at 13¼ on this side, so I'm going to go to 14¼ Looks good. And then we'll line up right on the end of that, all the way to the edge of our piece, and all of this is going to go away. All right. Next up, we have a big void we have this big void here that we're going to take out. So that is going to be 4.7 inches from this line that I started here. And going in this way, it's going to be 14.03, so 14 and 1/32. So we can go ahead and do that. We'll go in from this side. And we are going 14 and 1/32 of an inch, so halfway in between my lines here. I can throw another one down at 14 and 1/32 here. All right? And then, what did I say the other direction was? That is going to be 4.780. Because that's 4 and 25/32. All right, it's going to be just past 4 3/4, which would be 4.75. All right, so if we line this up, we are at, on this side, I'm at 35 and 1/4, and we're going to be counting down. I guess I should do it on this side, and then we can count up. That seems better. All right, 13 and 1/4, and we need to go to 4 3/4 plus 5/500ths of an inch. So, all right, we'll go from here. 3/4 of an inch will get us to 14, and then we have to go 4 more inches. That's going to get us to 18, and then literally it's just barely past the 18. So I'm more or less going to mark this at 4 3/4 inches. And then we can go from that point all the way to the end. And then in from the side, I'm going to get on that point that we have marked, back out. All right, so again, we should have, just kind of if we eyeball it here, this should be 4 3/4 plus just a hair, and that looks good. And then in from the side, just over 14 and 1/32, and that looks good. All right, so this is all going to get cut out. And then finally, we have our last corner over here that's going to disappear. And that is going to be, let's see, in from this edge, it's going to be 22.405. 22.405 is, well, 22 and 13/32, which is 3/8 plus, so 3/8 is 375 plus 1/32. All right, so 22, and this cutout is a little bit smaller than this one, so I'll move up above that. All right, 22.405, so 22 and 3/8 plus 1/32, so 22 and 3/8, then halfway in between the next line. And then, let's get the other direction here. I want this piece, so from this line up, we want to have 5.5 inches. So again, we start at 13 1/4. So 5 inches would be 18 1/4, and 0.5 would be 18 3/4. So let's get right on that line. 18 3/4 is going to be right here. And let's take that line all the way to the edge. Oh, looks like I missed that slightly. Let's try one more time. That looks good. One more time. I think my pencil's getting a little dull. There we go. All right, now in from this side. So it is that edge of the line that we're going for. All right, and then we'll come right up to the end of our line here. And it's this way. All right, and all of this is getting removed. Okay, that is the final shape that we need to make. So let us get started with cutting this down. So like I said, my first cut, I'm just going to take the whole board in half. You could try to stop when you get to the line in the middle and then cut into that line. You'll get a bigger piece on the other side that you might make use of later. On the other hand, it's going to be easier to just do the straight cut across, and then I'll actually have a second piece in case I mess the first one up where I can try again. All right, so let's see. This side is the side we're keeping is longer, so I'm going to keep that side on the table here. And we are going to grab some clamps. And the other thing we can do is, just like we did before with the circular saw, we can do that guide just to make sure we get a really straight cut here. I can obviously, just follow along with the thing, but if I have the guide clamped down, that's even better. Definitely going to help do a very straight cut. But in order to do that, remember we need to move this line over for my saw. So from the outside edge of my saw into where the blade starts cutting is 1.5 inches. So if I move this line over 1.5 inches, then that should be perfect. So let's measure this again. We are at 26.5. So if I put the line at 25, if I put a couple marks at 25 inches and line up my guide to that, that is going to be where I want to be. So 25, I'll do a 1 mark down here. Basically just need 1 mark on each edge, and then we can follow the line that we have to drill or to saw. So 25 is right there. Okay, and then on this side, also looking for 25. So that's going to be the inside edge of that. All right, looks good. I'll use my T-square as my guide here. And then we'll get our clamps. And we're going right on our marks. Hold on. I don't know how I marked that one too, but it is not the right place. It is very crooked. Let's check before we move on. Oh, that's 24. I have no idea what I'm doing. All right, 25 inches is there. So we get right on our mark. Tighten that one down a little bit. Right on that mark. Let's see, I might have to be on this side. Just to, yeah, still gonna be the best. All right. Okay, that looks good. So essentially, we're going to just cut all the way along this piece. Except, why am I off? Should be 1.5 inches. Should be 1.5 inches. Is this 1.5 inches? This is short of 1.5 inches. All right. This is why you keep measuring until you get the right spot. But let's see what's going on. What did I read wrong? All right, so this is 26.5. And that mark is 25.5. So maybe I was just on the wrong side of my mark. Or that is 25. That is 25. This is 25. That should be 1.5 inches. Okay. Okay. Everything was fine. I just need to line it up a little bit nicer. Let's redo it. But make sure that the line I'm cutting is going to be off the end of the table. Also important. Okay, actually, we can a little bit farther forward. And we can check this side before we move on. Looks like I got to be just a little bit farther over. Okay, that looks close. And then I'll clamp this side down as well. Well, I'm afraid we're going to hit this clamp before we finish sawing through, but that's all right. We'll deal with it when the time comes. All right, let's go ahead and make this cut. All right, so we started. Looks like I'm still a little bit off the line, so let me just move everything over a tiny bit more. That was not a tiny bit. Okay, that looks close. And we can then measure this one. Yeah, that's 1.5 inches. So I don't know what I was measuring wrong or how I was marking it wrong before, but all right. Now we're good. Let's do this. Okay. All right, that is now hitting this clamp. So we're going to have to, we'll freestyle the last bit here. Okay. One side done. Now we got to do our other side here. I guess I'll flip it this way. And I'm going to throw one clamp on just to keep the board from moving. So I'll need one more clamp. All right. And so this should be 1.5 inches in from the edge. Just going to get the clamp started, and I've decided this way is more effective. So that is really close. My guess was not bad. So that is right about 1.5 inches in. And then do the same thing on this side. Let's see. Again, we'll probably have to, I think we can clamp it here. It's a little bit up on an angle, but we'll see if it holds. 1.5 inches. Yes, if we're going to go here, we might as well go from the other side. Anyway, all right. Okay, so that is bowing out in the middle, but looks like it's roughly where we want it to be. Did that move this? No. Did it move this? No. All right, looks good. Let us make our cut. Wait, let us not make our cut. I think it was off the edge of the table, but it was really close. So let's set it again. All right, that is for sure off the edge of the table. Okay, that is pretty much 1.5 inches, yep. By that. And this side, it's definitely not 1.5 inches yet, but now it is. All right. Now we can do this. Okay. That's not the piece we want. That's the scrap. This is the piece we want. Looks like we were just off that line, but we were supposed to be 10.655 across, and this looks like we are 10 point, is pretty close. We might be slightly long. We're slightly long on this end. Looks like my last cut was a little crooked, and we're a little wider on that end. I think that's close enough. We can sand that down a little bit if we have to, and then our 26.5 across is pretty right on the rest of the way. All right. So this piece now is cut down to rough size. Let me clean up some of the sawdust here, and then we'll head over to the bandsaw and see if we can't get this exactly right. All right, back over at the bandsaw. I really like having it marked out with the X's so that I remember where things are going to go. So I have a small cut here. That's easy. That works because we fit. Then I have to make this cut, which we don't fit. It hits. So when I make this cut, I'm going to have to do it from this side of the piece. So I'm going to need to add some extra markings on that side. This cut is fine. The one in the very middle that I knew was going to be a problem, I don't think we can fit it on either side. It's just too wide. It's too right in the middle. So we're going to have to save that cut for later. We maybe could do a diagonal cut and do most of the work. And then this one is easy. And is easy, no problem. And this one, that cut is fine, but then the short side isn't going to work. So we're going to have to transfer that to the other side. All right, let's make the cuts we can, and then we'll transfer the marks to the other side of the board for the few we can, and then we'll figure out how we're going to make that last cut. All right, first I'll adjust the guard down since this is thinner than the last thing we cut here. And let's go for it. I guess I'll do this corner because I can do all of this corner. And then in from the other side. I'm basically I stopped right at the corner, and I'll do the same thing here. Looks good. Okay, and when you're making these cuts, like if you are cutting in and you go a little too far and you have some extra saw blade or saw marks there, that's okay. You can have little slots and it's still gonna work for everything we need to do. So do your best to get right to the corner, but if you go too far, we'll make it work. All right, we can do this long cut here. All right, and we can do the shortcut on this one. That one's a little crooked. All right, and then we can do the long cut here in the middle. All right, now we need to make the shortcut in to finish this side off and the long cut in to finish this side off. And then that one, we're probably gonna have to go back to the circular saw for the saws I have, or a hand saw would work well. Okay, so let's see. I think an easy way to mark this, because I stopped pretty much. This one I went just past the line. This one I went just past the line. So I think if I just get my square in from the outside here. If I go just inside of my line, we'll draw that one through to connect. And then we can do the same thing on this side. So if I get the square in just a little bit above the end of that, then we can use that to make that long cut. All right, let's go for those two. Do the easy one first. And then the longer cut. Okay, those look good. Like I said, yeah, there's no, well, actually, wait a minute. Now that we cut this corner out, I think we can make this cut. It clears just perfectly around the throat here. So let's give that a try. We're so close. It's like half an inch from cut all the way through. All right, that's as far as we can go with our vertical bandsaw. So I'm gonna clean this area up. We'll head back to the main table, get this cut the rest of the way off, and then we're gonna sand all the edges just so there's no splinters. All right, since we have this cut most of the way through, like really, really close to where we need it to go, I wanna use a saw that can reuse the bit that is cut, and then we'll get this last corner separately. So if I did the circular saw, that blade is much thicker, so I'd have to kind of redo the entire cut. I am going to use my hacksaw blade. I think the hacksaw itself won't fit. If I had a handsaw here, I would probably use that, but just gonna use the hacksaw blade and try to get that last little bit cut out. Obviously, if you have a jigsaw or other saw, it's gonna be better than whatever bad idea this is, but feel like I can make it work. All right, so we'll work our way in. And that was pretty easy. Didn't hate that. All right. Last thing we need to do is we're just going to sand all the edges so there are hopefully no splinters. All right, that seems pretty good. Of course, if you don't have some kind of power sander, you can just do this with regular sandpaper. Even a file, you could do a decent amount of the work with. All right, this piece I think is ready. I'm going to get rid of all the woodworking tools. Let's bring the robot chassis back in, and let's get this thing mounted to the robot. All right, let's see how this fits inside of our robot. I think I'm going to open the battery flap. I'm not really sure if that's going to help or not, but it's a little more directions we can reach. All right, so this wood piece, we have the like wide section here. This should fit next to the battery mount. So this part is going to stick in next to the battery mount. So it's going to go in this way, like this. And remember, like if you're trying to put it next to the battery mount and it's not working, flip the whole thing over. And it should work. All right, then we have the cutouts on the other side, which should be getting around our transmissions, our motor transmissions here and here. And let me see, I'm going to take this out for a second. Make sure your motor, we got a ton of motor wires like hiding in here. Make sure they're not like in a place where it's going to rest on the motor wires. So it is going to sit, I think, on top of the sim motors. So if the motors are on top of the sim motors, or if the wires are on top of the sim motors, that's just going to make it sit really unlevel. Okay, so that seems pretty good. The one thing we want to check before we move too far forwards here is measure the width, or feel with your fingers the width. If this is sticking out past the edge of the frame by any amount, especially if it's a large amount, you might need to do something about that. You could sand it down, you could file it down, you could try to make another cut, but we don't want to be much wider than the frame of the robot. If you're off by a little bit, if you just like line this up and you can feel just like a hair of it sticking over the edge, that's going to be okay. All right. The next thing that I'm seeing is we're balanced on the front of our structure, and it's also resting on top of the sim motors back on the inside, which is a little hard to see. But if we look like on the edges, right, if I push this edge down, it makes the other end pop up. There is a gap here on both sides. So that's something that I think we need to fix in some way, because otherwise we're going to be bending the wood, and it's going to be pressing down really hard on those sim motors when we mount it. There are a couple of different solutions. One of them is if you look sort of like in where the sim motors are touching, you can kind of reach in there and mark where the sim motor is. We could then take this plate out. So we know where that sim motor was. We could take this plate out, and it was hitting like here and here on these plates. I could start sanding on this edge, starting to 45 that edge until it clears the sim motor. That'll allow this to sit a little bit lower. But also, don't forget the front or the back, the end of our robot is higher up, because this is like an 1/8 inch plate, or a little over an 1/8 inch plate that's sitting on top of the other side plates that we're mounting to. So because we have those differences in height, we got a little bit of an issue there as well. So I think one of the solutions that I'm going to try is if we mount the sides with some washers, we can kind of, let's see if we stack some of these washers up on the end here. I think what we'll see is, so one is not enough. One is still below the edge. But if I go all the way up to 3 washers, that feels pretty much even. So if I take 3 washers and another stack of 3 washers here, and I go and place this down on top of that, hopefully without knocking them off. Okay, what we should see is now, when I push down on that, well, the movement is much less. It looks like there's still a little bit, but also my plywood might be a little bit warped. So that looks to me like if I push down here and here, so I'm pushing down on the front of the chassis and the sim motor, those washers are just barely not touching. So I think that's going to be perfect. We are going to pull the board down a little bit, but it's not going to be pushing down super, super hard. So I think when we go to mount this, I'm going to use these washers to help adjust the position. All right, our next problem is this has some movement. You can adjust this around a little bit to get it lined up nicely. Our goal is to come far enough forward that we can use the inner row of holes here on the end of our robot as mounting holes. But also, if you go too far forward, this wheel is now hitting the wood. Same thing could happen on the other side. So we can't go quite that far forward. It feels like this maybe is very close. So I'm guiding this side, my wider side here, to be just in between the 2 wheels. And the clearance is a little scary, but seems okay. If yours doesn't have a good spot where you're sure you can mount it without it hitting, then you could take it out and try to either sand down these edges or cut them. Again, cut in and take another little bite out. I think if it's close, the best thing for us to do is let's go ahead and mount it. And then once it's mounted, we'll know that that's like the final position that the thing is going to be at. And then if we have to take it out, then if it's rubbing, we can take it out. We'll know how much we have to remove, and we'll know the position that it's going to go back to. OK, so what I need to do then is we're going to grab some clamps. We need a bunch of clamps to hold this in place. So I think we want some big ones, some medium ones. And we'll see. I might need, I think we want these too. All right. Got them. I think this is not big enough to fit. Yeah, that's not going to be big enough to fit. All right, but this will. Will it reach far enough back that we can clamp the wood? Yes. Okay, so the goal is to kind of get a clamp here, and I'll go maybe one in the middle on the front like this. All right, and then I'm going to kind of check. My wheels are not rubbing. They are close, but not hitting. On this side, I have plenty of room, so it's only really close on the one side. And then I'm going to get those 2 stacks of 3 washers each. And those will slide under. I think I just want 1 stack of 3 washers, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of this piece of wood for right now. And then that is where I'm going to go ahead and clamp. And I'm just going to clamp this one to the edge that's there. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'll get another stack of 3 washers and 1 more clamp. And I'll kind of just put this in the middle. I think there's definitely some, like this side is higher up, but I think my piece of plywood is warped a little, so I'm believing that the 3 washers is going to be about right. And these are washers for number 10 bolts, which is the size bolts we're using. Just seems to be right. But in theory, right, because the bolt's going to go through the wood and the metal underneath, you can use any size washer as long as it kind of gets you the dimension you want. All right, so this is now clamped in place. We can do a quick test, right? Rolling the wheels, it is not hitting. So we're kind of OK with that. We always know we can take it out and we can sand or file down some of the wood if necessary, right where the wheels would hit. Now our problem is we need to drill holes, and those holes need to line up with the holes underneath. And that's a little bit tricky. So this is number 7 drill bit, and that's ideally what we want for these holes. If I put it, basically, if I take the drill bit and I put it through the holes here, and I support it right even with the bottom plate, that's how much extra drill bit I have, just that little bit sticking out. That is enough to just barely touch the wood, but I do need some to clamp into my drill. So this drill bit might not be long enough to do this. We're going to give it a try. I'm going to grab the drill bit just on the very end with the chuck here, so that we have as much possible amount sticking out as we can. And when I pass this through, it is going to pop out roughly. I think it's going to mark the wood. I'm definitely not going to be able to drill all the way through the wood. But if what we can do, if we can go and drill through in a few different places and get marks, then we can unclamp it and follow those holes the rest of the way through. The front here, the back here is going to be harder because that is even bigger than the side ones. But it looks like it might just bump through for me. So if that works, that's going to be the easiest way for us to transfer the holes. If not, you're going to have to kind of do your best to mark where you think one of the holes is, and then make the drill from the top. And if you have to open the size hole up afterwards, you can do that. Also, if you get one of the pieces aligned, remember all the pieces we cut off the frame earlier? You can actually use those as a template. So if one hole's in the right place, then you can drill through all of them. Or in fact, let me grab, I think this is what was left after we took our 2 5-inch pieces off. In fact, you could, if I took the clamp off here, which sure, I'll do it for a second. You could, in theory, take this piece and put bolts in. So if I put bolts in here and over here, then we know the holes are going to be lined up. So then you could try drilling through. Now, of course, I still can't drill through it because it's the whole big thing that doesn't let me reach through. But I could cut this in half to get a section that I could drill through and use that as a guide that way. Or actually, maybe, it might help if you just try to drill the second row of holes, but that's why you can use one of these as a template to help you out a little bit. All right, so I'm going to clamp this back up, and let's see if we can get these holes drilled through the bottom. The other easiest solution, by the way, it does cost some money, is you can buy drill bits that are a longer length, and those would work fine. Those would go all the way through the wood and solve all of our problems. All right, So now we need to drill from the bottom, and I have clamps on 3 of the sides, which is going to make it so that I can't really rest this on any of those sides. So I got to tip this onto the front somehow, like this. Again, I'm trying not to rest it too much on our fuel mechanism here. So I'm going to kind of keep holding it, tipping it forward a little bit. And what I'm going to look at, I guess we can do this side first, is this hole is off the edge of my wood piece. This hole would be through the sides of the wood piece. So I'm going to use not the middle hole that my clamp is blocking, but one to either side of that should cleanly go through the wood. So just make sure like you can get it lined up, and then you can sort of see from the side, yeah, that's going to hit the wood. All right, so we're going to drill as far as it'll go, that's it. And then, like I said, I'll skip the middle one because my clamp is there, and I'll go down to this next one here. And that's all we can do for that. All right. Then we have this long section of wood here. We'll try to get 2 bolts for that as well. I'll maybe move in a few holes. Let's see. So I think this is the first hole that would touch the wood at all. And that would be right on the edge of it. Oh, we need to be drilling through the small bottom one anyway, so that's even easier to line up. All right, so the first one looks like it's going to go off the edge. I'm going to go to the third one. That seems fine. The third hole here, and we'll drill as much as we can. That's about it. And then I'll do 1, 2, 3, third one in from the other side too. And we'll drill that one. Okay, that one went crooked, but went a little deeper. And then last but not least, on the other side where our wood is, let's see here. This one is wider. Let me duck over to this side. So we have a few more options. So this one or this one. Okay, first of all, on the top, I know this one would go off the edge of the wood, so this one is my best choice. And then the clamp is here. I could do this one, but I think I have just enough room to do this one down here. Do I? Yeah, that looks fine. So I'm going to do that one, just because it fits. Okay. Now, go ahead and tip this back down. And we're going to unclamp our board here. And take the board out. Let me shift the robot over so you have some space on the edge of the table here. All right, and if I flip this over, we can see all 6 of the holes that we started trying to drill. Let's go ahead and finish them all. So this is wood. I could get a clamp to hold it in place. It's not going to move like metal moves. So I'm just going to freehand this and drill through the rest of the way. All right, so those 2 are through. Let's rotate it and get, well, there we go. Let's get these 2. Okay, and spin it around. And these are our last 2 that we got to trace through. All right, and now let's get this put back in. Got some chipping there, that's all right. Okay, and we are going to use, oh, I'm dropping my washers. All right, we are going to use the 1-inch long. So we had these ones from before. These are the 1-inch button head, 1032, 1-inch long button head bolts. And those are the same ones that we used for part of the floor when we were attaching those angle pieces through the plastic on our floor a number of steps ago. And we have a bunch of those left over, so those are going to be the perfect bolts to use here. And I guess we're going to start out by trying to get these ones lined up. So I think it was the third hole in, although this really, is only going to kind of fit in one place. Okay, and then if we jump over to, let's say, this side here, we know we have to get those washers in between when we drop the bolt heads in. So I'm going to get a stack of 3 washers and try to line that up with my hole. Looks good. Another stack of 3. Drop that one in. See, I think the churro bolt is right there. But we are, I think, when this is all the way up, going to be able to clear it. So that is going to be fine. I'll make it a little harder to take apart. I'm going to go ahead and get a nut started on both of these since this is really accessible. Okay, and then let's spin it a little bit so we can get to the other side here. And this is going to be sort of the same problem. We need 3 washers stacked up with one of the holes. And again, this side for me feels like it's a little higher than 3 washers. I think some of that is the plywood being bent. If yours seems way more than 3 washers when you go to do it, you could sneak another one in there. I have 3 washers in the middle here already ready to go. All right, so we'll line that up with that hole. Gently put it back down. And there we go. And for the other one, there we go. All right, go ahead and start these ones. And my decision to go to the 4th hole means that we are not in the way of the churro bolts on this side, so this side's going to be a little easier. All right. So we have all the bolts in, so I can go ahead and tighten this side down all the way. And this is, again, the 1/8 hex key and 3/8 wrench. Here's the size for these. All right. Seems good. Let's get the other side tightened down. Okay. And when you're tightening this, remember the top is just wood, so you can definitely dig the bolt into the wood if you just keep tightening it. So you can stop at some point. All right, and that's good. And really, those front bolts, I don't know how important they are because this feels very secure with just our 2 on the side. And this might be something where you end up using only 1 on the front. Maybe you don't bother using the front ones. I think at least 1 is nice. And some of it depends, too, on how often you think you're going to take this board in and out of the robot frame. If you're never going to take it out, then it doesn't really matter. We might as well get 2 in and have it nice and secure. But one note is that while people are working on other parts of the robot, if you made this electronics board and got it to fit in here, you could actually take the electronics board out and be mounting everything outside of the robot, and then bring the whole thing and mount the whole thing back in together. And we may end up doing that when we get to mounting our components in the next video. We'll just have to see how well things fit. But just to make sure this goes all the way in the way we want, I'm going to reach underneath with a nut and go ahead and get these last two going here. Okay, and if you can't reach through the battery mount like I'm trying to do right now, just flip the robot up or pull it off the edge of the table so you have room to access stuff. But I have to get the nuts started before the wrench will help us here. My hand just fits. All right, let's pass the wrench to my other arm so I don't have to take it out. And we're on. And tight. All right. Whew. That is a mounted electrical panel. Okay, so once again, if you need to, now that this is mounted, move your wheels, make sure you have enough clearance everywhere. If it feels like anything is rubbing or is super close, I mean, if you're within a few sheets of paper, that's probably too close because there will be some flex in the chassis. But kind of if you can lean on everything, if you got maybe 1/4 of an inch or so of clearance, that's gonna be more than enough. And so you're set. But if you have to take it out and you have to file it down or sand it down a little bit to get it to clear, go ahead and do that. If not, your board is finished, it's mounted, and you are ready for the next video in which we will start attaching and wiring up our electrical components. But before we go, we're going to give a special thanks to Argosy, first, Aramco, and Team 302 Lake Orion for hosting our studio.